The flash of a camera shutter broke through the ambient noise as Willow Evans captured the triumphant smile of a young graduate receiving her diploma. It was moments like these, genuine joy frozen in time, that made Willow love her job as a professional photographer, despite the challenging hustle of freelance work. Little did she know that across the crowded auditorium, Thomas Harrington, CEO of Meridian Publishing, was watching her with growing fascination as she photographed his little sister's proudest moment. Willow moved with practiced efficiency through the crowd of graduates and their families. Her camera bag bounced against her hip as she navigated the sea of royal blue gowns and mortarboards. The university had hired her to capture the official ceremony photos, but she always made sure to catch those candid moments that families treasured most. "Excuse me," she said, gently maneuvering around a cluster of emotional parents. She spotted a graduate embracing her elderly grandparents and instinctively lifted her camera, capturing the three generations with tears in their eyes. From his seat in the front row, Thomas noticed the slender woman with the camera moving with purpose and artistic precision. He'd initially been focused solely on his sister Megan's graduation, a monumental achievement considering all the challenges she'd overcome. But now his attention kept drifting to the photographer with the wavy auburn hair pulled into a practical ponytail. "She's good," he murmured to himself, observing how she seemed to anticipate emotional moments before they happened, her camera ready at exactly the right second. When the ceremony ended, the auditorium erupted into chaos as families sought out their graduates. Thomas made his way toward the stage where his sister would exit. At 6'2", he had the advantage of height, scanning the crowd for Megan's familiar face. Willow, meanwhile, was attempting to capture one last series of shots. As she backed up for a better angle, she collided with something solid. "I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, spinning around to find herself looking up at a broad-shouldered man in an impeccably tailored suit. Thomas steadied her with a hand on her elbow, a reflex action. "No harm done," he said, his deep voice carrying easily over the crowd. Willow found herself momentarily speechless as she met his eyes, a striking shade of green that contrasted with his dark hair. She quickly regained her composure, professional instincts kicking in. "Thank you, it gets a bit chaotic at these events." "So I see," Thomas replied, a slight smile playing at his lips. "You've been capturing some amazing moments today." "You noticed?" Willow asked, surprised. Before Thomas could respond, a blur of blue raced toward them. "Tommy," Megan Harrington threw herself at her brother, still clutching her diploma. Thomas caught his sister in a bear hug, lifting her off her feet. "There's my brilliant graduate. Congratulations, Meg." Willow instinctively raised her camera, capturing the siblings' joyful embrace. The image on her view screen was perfect. The tall, distinguished man in his expensive suit contrasted with the exuberant graduate, both with identical smiles that transformed their faces. "Oh," Megan noticed Willow. "You're the photographer. I've been watching you work. You're amazing." Willow lowered her camera, smiling. "Thank you. Congratulations on your achievement." "Could you take one of us together?" Megan asked eagerly. "I know you're the official photographer, but of course," Willow replied warmly. "Stand together by that column. The lighting's perfect there." Thomas and Megan positioned themselves where directed. As Willow focused her lens, she couldn't help noticing how protective Thomas seemed of his sister, his arm around her shoulders, pride radiating from him. "Perfect," Willow said after taking several shots. "The university will upload all the photos to their portal within 3 days," but she reached into her pocket and handed Megan a business card. "If you'd like any special edits or additional prints, feel free to contact me directly." "Thank you." Megan took the card. "Oh, I should find my friends for some pictures. Tommy, I'll be right back." As Megan disappeared into the crowd, Thomas turned to Willow. "She's always been like that, a whirlwind of energy," Willow smiled. "It's a special day for her, for both of you, it seems." "Yes," Thomas agreed, his expression softening. Our parents aren't around anymore, so seeing her graduate today means everything. Something in his tone made Willow lower her camera completely. That makes these photos even more important then. Thomas nodded, studying her with interest. I didn't catch your name, Willow Evans, she replied, extending her hand professionally. Thomas Harrington, he said, taking her hand. His grip was firm but gentle. A group of graduates called out to Willow, waving for her attention. I should get back to work, she said apologetically. Of course, Thomas released her hand. I hope we'll see you at Megan's celebration dinner tonight. The university arranged something at the Terrace restaurant for the honors graduates. I'll be there, Willow confirmed. The university booked me for the whole day's events. Then I look forward to seeing more of your work, Thomas said with a smile that transformed his serious face. As Willow walked away, she couldn't help feeling that the handsome brother's interest went beyond her photography skills. The thought both thrilled and unsettled her. She'd learned the hard way not to mix business with pleasure, especially not at work events. The Terrace restaurant had been transformed for the evening's celebration. White tablecloths and blue floral centerpieces created an elegant atmosphere, while floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city's skyline. Willow circulated among the tables, capturing candid moments between the graduates and their families. Would you like something to drink? A waiter asked her during a brief pause. Just water, please, Willow replied. I'm working. The photographer doesn't get to enjoy the party. Thomas's voice came from behind her. Willow turned, finding him standing there with 2 flutes of champagne. Professional boundaries, she explained with a smile. Hard to take steady shots after champagne. Thomas set 1 glass down. Fair enough. Mind if I join you for a moment? Megan's busy with her classmates, and I've exhausted my small talk abilities with the other families. Willow gestured to the empty chair beside her. By all means. As Thomas sat down, Willow noticed several people glancing their way with curious expressions. You seem to be attracting attention, she observed. Thomas grimaced slightly. Occupational hazard. I try to keep a low profile at Megan's events. Today is her day, not mine. What exactly do you do? Willow asked, her curiosity piqued. I run a publishing company, Thomas answered, his tone deliberately casual. What about you? Have you always been a photographer? Since college, Willow replied. I started shooting campus events to pay tuition. Turned out I had a knack for capturing moments that tell stories. She paused, studying him. A publishing company, that must be interesting. Thomas took a sip of his champagne. It has its moments. We're lucky to work with talented authors and illustrators. Actually, he leaned forward, lowering his voice, we're publishing a photography book next spring, Environmental Portraits Across America. Willow's eyes lit up. That sounds fantastic. I've always wanted to do a project like that. What's stopping you? Thomas asked. Reality, Willow laughed. Freelance photography barely covers my rent and student loans. Cross-country photography expeditions aren't exactly in my budget. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. The practical challenges of pursuing creative dreams. Something I understand all too well. You don't strike me as someone who's had to worry much about practical challenges, Willow observed, taking in his expensive watch and custom suit. A shadow passed over Thomas's face. Appearances can be deceiving. Megan and I had our share of struggles growing up. Before Willow could respond, Megan bounded over to their table. There you are, Tommy. They're about to do the toasts. Thomas stood. Duty calls, he said to Willow. Save me a dance later. Willow blinked in surprise. I don't normally, just one, he said with a smile that made her resolve waver. Consider it part of capturing the full event experience. As Thomas walked away with his sister, Willow found herself watching him with more than professional interest. There was something compelling about him, not just his obvious good looks, but the way he spoke about his sister, the genuine interest he'd shown in Willow's work. The evening progressed with speeches and toasts. Willow continued taking photos, but found her gaze repeatedly drawn to Thomas, who seemed to be watching her just as often. When the formal part of the evening concluded and music began playing, Willow felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. She was adjusting her camera settings when Thomas appeared at her side. "I believe you promised me a dance," he said, eyes twinkling. "I don't recall making any promises," Willow countered with a smile, "but I suppose I could take a short break." She carefully set her camera on the table and allowed Thomas to lead her to the dance floor. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back as they began moving to the music. "So, Thomas Harrington, who runs a publishing company," Willow said conversationally, "tell me something about yourself that isn't on a business card." Thomas considered this. "I collect vintage typewriters. I have 17 so far." "Really?" Willow looked genuinely interested. "That's unexpected." "Your turn," Thomas said. "Something about Willow Evans that isn't obvious from your profession." "I'm terrified of birds," Willow admitted. "Ironic for someone named after a tree." Thomas laughed, the sound rich and warm. "That must make outdoor photography interesting." "You have no idea," Willow grinned. "I once abandoned all my equipment running from an angry goose at a wedding. Please tell me you got it all back." "Eventually. The best man rescued my camera bag while I hid in the catering tent." As they continued dancing, the conversation flowed easily between them. Willow found herself relaxing in Thomas's presence, forgetting temporarily that she was supposed to be working. "I should get back to taking photos," she said reluctantly when the song ended. "Of course," Thomas replied, stepping back. "But I'd like to continue our conversation sometime, perhaps over dinner." Willow hesitated. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. You're essentially my client tonight." "Technically, the university is your client," Thomas pointed out. "And after tonight, there's no professional conflict." Willow considered his words. There was something about Thomas that intrigued her, made her want to say yes despite her reservations. "All right," she said finally. "Dinner would be nice." Thomas's smile was worth the risk. "I'll call you." "That is, if you don't mind giving me your number." Willow took out one of her business cards and scribbled her personal number on the back. "This one doesn't go to my work voicemail," she explained, handing it to him. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, sending an unexpected jolt through Willow. From Thomas's expression, he'd felt it too. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of photographs and stolen glances. As the event wound down, Willow packed up her equipment, exhausted but strangely energized. "Need help carrying anything to your car?" Thomas appeared beside her as she zipped up her camera bag. "Thank you, but I've got it," Willow replied. "Years of practice." Thomas nodded. "Then I'll walk you out. It's late and the parking garage can be deserted at this hour." They walked in comfortable silence to the elevator and down to the parking level. When they reached Willow's modest sedan, she turned to face him. "Thank you for the escort," she said, "and for making a long workday more enjoyable." "The pleasure was mine," Thomas replied. "I'll call you tomorrow about dinner if that's not too soon." Willow shook her head. "Not too soon at all." For a moment they stood looking at each other, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Thomas leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Good night, Willow Evans," he said softly. "Good night, Thomas Harrington," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. As she drove home, Willow couldn't stop thinking about the unexpected turn her day had taken. She'd gone to work expecting nothing more than another event photography job. Instead, she'd met someone who made her heart race with just a smile. The next morning, Willow woke to the sound of her phone ringing. Groggily, she reached for it, expecting to see her mother's number or perhaps another client. Instead, an unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. "Hello." She answered cautiously. "Willow, it's Thomas. Thomas Harrington from last night." Willow sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Thomas, good morning." "I hope I'm not calling too early," he said, sounding slightly uncertain. "No, it's fine," Willow assured him, glancing at her clock. "It was just past 9. I'm just surprised to hear from you so soon." "I said I'd call about dinner," Thomas reminded her. "And I wanted to catch you before your day filled up with appointments." Willow smiled, touched by his consideration. "Actually, Sundays are usually my day off." Perfect, Thomas said, his voice warming. Are you free tonight? There's a new restaurant on the riverfront I've been wanting to try. Tonight would be lovely, Willow replied, feeling a flutter of anticipation. They arranged the details, and after hanging up, Willow fell back against her pillows with a giddy smile. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this excited about a date. Later that afternoon, as Willow was deliberating over what to wear, her phone pinged with a message. It was from Thomas Harrington, requesting a quote for additional graduation photos. Willow smiled, wondering if Thomas had mentioned their dinner plans to his sister. She was putting the finishing touches on her makeup when her doorbell rang. Thomas was 10 minutes early, a quality Willow, who was habitually punctual, appreciated. When she opened the door, she found him standing there with a small bouquet of wildflowers. These reminded me of some of the shots you were taking yesterday, he explained, handing them to her. Natural, vibrant, beautiful. Willow felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. Thank you, they're perfect. She invited him in while she put the flowers in water. Thomas looked around her apartment with interest. The small space was filled with framed photographs, some of breathtaking landscapes, others of people caught in moments of unguarded emotion. These are incredible, he said, studying a black and white image of an elderly couple dancing in what appeared to be their living room. Your work. Willow nodded, joining him. That's my grandparents on their 50th anniversary. It was the last photo I took of my grandfather before he passed away. Thomas looked at her with understanding. It's more than just a photograph, then. The best ones always are, Willow replied softly. At the restaurant, they were seated at a table overlooking the river. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the water, creating a romantic atmosphere neither could ignore. So, Willow said after they'd ordered, tell me more about this publishing company of yours. Thomas hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. It's called Meridian Publishing. I'm the CEO. Willow's eyes widened. Meridian. But that's, she stopped, suddenly understanding the attention he'd received at the graduation dinner. You're not just running some small press, are you? No, Thomas admitted. We're one of the largest independent publishers in the country. I have half your books on my shelf, Willow said, stunned. Why didn't you say something yesterday? Thomas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Willow was beginning to recognize as a sign of discomfort. When people find out what I do, who I am, it changes how they interact with me. I wanted you to get to know me as just Thomas, not as the CEO of Meridian. Willow considered this. I can understand that, she said finally, though I feel slightly out of my depth now. Please don't, Thomas said earnestly. My job title doesn't define me any more than yours defines you. Their conversation gradually returned to easier topics. Thomas told her about growing up with Megan, 7 years his junior. How he'd taken over as her guardian when their parents died in a car accident during his senior year of college. That must have been incredibly difficult, Willow said softly, taking on that responsibility so young. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, Thomas admitted. I was 22 trying to finish school while raising a teenager, but Megan made it worth every sacrifice. And somewhere along the way, you became CEO of a major publishing house, Willow said, impressed. Thomas smiled ruefully. That was less planned. My father had been building the company for years. After he died, I took over with barely any idea what I was doing. Those first few years were terrifying. You must have done something right, Willow observed. I had good people around me, Thomas replied modestly. What about you? How did you go from college photography to professional work? Willow told him about her journey, the unpaid internships, the weddings and events she'd shot to build her portfolio, the gradual transition to more creative work. It hasn't been easy, she concluded. The freelance life is precarious. Some months I barely make rent, other months I have more work than I can handle. But you love it, Thomas said, not a question but an observation. I do, Willow acknowledged. There's nothing like capturing a moment that might otherwise be forgotten. As dinner progressed, Willow found herself increasingly drawn to Thomas. Behind his successful exterior was a man who had faced significant challenges and emerged stronger for them. His obvious devotion to his sister spoke volumes about his character. When the check came, Thomas reached for it automatically. "We should split it," Willow suggested, not wanting to feel unequal from the start. Thomas looked surprised but nodded. "If that's what you prefer." "It is," Willow confirmed, "though next time can be your treat if you like." Thomas's eyes lit up. "Next time? I'm already looking forward to it." After dinner, they walked along the riverfront, talking easily about books, photography, and their favorite places in the city. As the evening air grew cooler, Thomas offered Willow his jacket, which she accepted gratefully. "It smells like you," she commented, then blushed at her own words. Thomas smiled. "Is that a good thing?" "Very good," Willow admitted, feeling bold in the darkness. When they reached a scenic overlook, they paused to admire the city lights reflected in the water. Thomas turned to face her, his expression serious. "Willow, I need to be honest about something." Her heart sank. Here it came, the revelation that he wasn't really interested, or that he was seeing someone else, or "I haven't felt this way about someone in a very long time," Thomas continued. "And it terrifies me." Willow's anxiety transformed into relief. "Oh," she breathed, "that's not what I was expecting." Thomas took her hand. "What were you expecting?" "Something bad," she admitted. "The dating world has made me somewhat pessimistic." "I can understand that," Thomas said. "But I want you to know my intentions. I like you, Willow, very much, and I'd like to see where this goes if you're willing." Willow looked up at him, this man who had walked into her life so unexpectedly just one day ago. Logic told her it was too soon for such feelings. Experience warned her to be cautious, but something deeper, something she hadn't trusted in years, urged her to take a chance. "I'd like that too," she said softly. Thomas's smile was radiant as he leaned down, his intention clear. Willow met him halfway, their lips connecting in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened with mutual desire. His arms encircled her waist as hers wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "I've wanted to do that since I first saw you," Thomas confessed. "Taking pictures of your sister's graduation," Willow teased. "Making magic with your camera," Thomas corrected. "You were so focused, so passionate about capturing those moments for others. It was beautiful to watch." Willow felt something shift inside her, a wall beginning to crumble. "No one's ever seen my work that way before." "Then they haven't been looking properly," Thomas said simply. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind for Willow. Between her busy photography schedule and Thomas's demanding role at Meridian, finding time together required creativity and commitment. But somehow, they managed to see each other several times a week, each encounter deepening their connection. Thomas attended gallery openings with Willow, genuinely interested in the art world she inhabited. Willow found herself fascinated by the publishing industry, asking endless questions about Thomas's work that he was delighted to answer. 1 month into their relationship, Thomas invited Willow to dinner at his home, a spacious penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic city views. "This place is incredible," Willow said, wandering around the living room. She paused before a wall displaying framed photographs, one of which she recognized as her own work from Megan's graduation. "You framed it." Thomas joined her, sliding an arm around her waist. "Of course. It captures one of the happiest days of my life, and not just because of Megan's achievement." Willow leaned into him, touched by the gesture. "It's strange to think how differently that day could have gone if I hadn't been assigned to that graduation." "I'd have found you eventually," Thomas said with certainty. "Some things are meant to be." Willow looked up at him, struck by the conviction in his voice. "You really believe that?" "I do," Thomas affirmed. "I believe we were supposed to meet that day, and I'm grateful every day that we did." Over dinner, Thomas surprised her with a proposal not of marriage but of opportunity. "Remember that photography book I mentioned? The one about environmental portraits across America?" Willow nodded, pouring herself more wine. "Of course." The photographer we contracted had to withdraw due to health issues, Thomas explained. We need someone to take over the project. Willow set down her glass. Thomas, are you offering me the job? I'm suggesting you apply for it, Thomas clarified. I can't directly hire you, conflict of interest, but I can make sure your portfolio gets in front of the right people. Willow was silent for a long moment. I don't want special treatment because we're dating. It's not special treatment to recognize talent, Thomas countered. Your work speaks for itself, Willow. I'd be recommending you even if we'd never gone beyond that first meeting. After careful consideration, Willow agreed to submit her portfolio. 2 weeks later, after a rigorous interview process with Meridian's art department during which Thomas recused himself entirely, she was offered the project. The assignment would take her across the country for 3 months, photographing people in their natural environments, farmers, artists, teachers, healthcare workers, and more. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it also meant 3 months away from Thomas. We'll make it work, he assured her the night before her departure. They were in her apartment, surrounded by her packed bags. There's video calls, weekends when I can fly to wherever you are. Willow nestled against his chest, memorizing the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. 3 months is a long time. Not in the grand scheme of things, Thomas said, running his fingers through her hair. Not when I'm planning for forever. Willow looked up at him, eyes wide. Forever, Thomas cupped her face gently. Too soon to say that out loud? No, Willow whispered. Not too soon at all. The 3 months of separation tested their relationship but ultimately strengthened it. True to his word, Thomas flew to meet Willow in various cities across her journey. They spent weekends exploring new places together, Willow capturing everything through her lens. When she wasn't with Thomas, Willow threw herself into the project with all her creative energy. The resulting photographs were unlike anything she'd produced before, intimate, powerful portraits that told the stories of ordinary Americans living extraordinary lives. Upon her return, Meridian organized an exhibition of her work at a prestigious gallery. As Willow stood among the crowd on opening night, watching people react to her photographs, she felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she'd experienced before. They love it, Thomas murmured, appearing at her side with 2 champagne flutes. As I knew they would. Willow accepted the champagne gratefully. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, Thomas corrected her. You had this talent all along. I just helped create the opportunity for others to see it. As the evening progressed, various critics and art directors approached Willow with compliments and questions. Thomas stood back, allowing her the professional spotlight she deserved. Near the end of the night, as the crowd began to thin, Thomas led Willow to a quiet corner of the gallery. There's one photograph that isn't part of the exhibition, he said mysteriously, pulling a small wrapped package from his jacket. Curious, Willow unwrapped it to find a framed photograph, the one she'd taken of Thomas and Megan at the graduation ceremony where they'd first met. Turn it over, Thomas instructed softly. Willow did so, finding a small envelope taped to the back. Inside was a handwritten note, where it all began. Will you continue our journey together? Beneath the note was a stunning vintage-style engagement ring. Willow looked up to find Thomas watching her with hopeful eyes. I had an elaborate speech prepared, he admitted. But standing here, surrounded by your incredible work, I realize that simple truth is all that matters. I love you, Willow Evans. Will you marry me? Tears filled Willow's eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes. Thomas slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and support. Around them, the remaining gallery attendees burst into applause, having witnessed the unexpected proposal. I hope you don't mind an audience, Thomas murmured against her lips. A photographer never minds an audience, Willow replied with a laugh, just as long as someone captured the moment. Megan's behind that column with a camera, Thomas confessed. I thought you might want this particular life event professionally documented. Willow laughed, waving to Megan, who emerged with a camera nearly identical to Willow's own. "You thought of everything." "I tried," Thomas said, pulling her close again. "Though I suspect this is just the beginning of all the moments we'll capture together." 1 year later, Willow and Thomas stood hand in hand at their own celebration. Their wedding, an intimate affair in the botanical gardens, had been everything they'd hoped for. Now, at the reception, they watched as guests admired the photo display. Willow had created images documenting their journey from that first meeting at Megan's graduation to their engagement and beyond. "Who would have thought," Willow mused, leaning against her husband's shoulder, "that going to work that day would change my life so completely?" Thomas pressed a kiss to her temple. "I knew the moment I saw you that you were someone special. Though I'll admit, I never imagined just how perfectly our lives would fit together. Like pieces of a puzzle we didn't know needed solving," Willow agreed. As they moved to the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife, Willow thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a chance meeting at a graduation ceremony to building a life together, their story had unfolded in ways neither could have predicted. And as Thomas held her close, whispering promises for their future, Willow knew with absolute certainty that the most beautiful photographs were yet to come, not just those she would capture with her camera, but the memories they would create together, one day at a time.